The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle, where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships. Or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Show. And this week's show, we're going to be talking about 5 steps to becoming more committed to your goals. And these are tried and true things that I have done. And when I really think about this, I often talk to clients that will ask me like, hey, how do you stay so committed to your goals? And what I often say is like, listen, man, there's nothing special about what I do other than use this specific framework I'm about to go through with you guys today. So this show is for the business owner, the entrepreneur who maybe struggles with being committed to their goals, maybe having just a system of how to stay committed. And then not only that, but basically a map or a guide that will help you, stay on that commitment or stay on that path. And most of the stuff I talk about when it comes to this are discussions I have with a lot of my clients about commitments. And what I often look at is the things that I teach them are like, hey, what are my top 5 ways that I can really be committed to my goals and to the things that I want in my life? Because for a long time for me, depending on what it is, I will have trouble with my commitments if I don't use these 5 things. And so as I'm telling you this, these are the things that help me be committed to my goals. And not only that, it'll help me just be accountable to myself with them. And so I want to share those with you today. Really, these could ultimately be each individual episode by themselves. And so I don't want to make this super long, but I also want to give you enough context around this to where, you could say, hey, listen, are these things that I'm practicing myself to help me be committed to my goals? And that's really, what I've found is these are kind of like a map or a guide that would help me stay committed. So number one thing I think more than anything else with people I talk to is knowing what you want more than what you don't want. And this may seem kind of awkward, but studies really show that people who have a clear vision and defined goals have much better focus and much better discipline. And so a lot of times people will talk about, I need more discipline or I need more focus. Really what it comes down to is knowing what you want. Having a clearly defined goal or a clearly defined vision allows you to have that focus and allows you to have that discipline. And then it's easier and simpler to make choices. And so a lot of times the reason why we don't have discipline is because we have too many choices. A lot of times we lose focus because our focus is, imagine if I want 10 different things. Well, I'm kind of splitting energy between those 10 different things versus, 1 or 2 is then I can have that extreme focus and simplicity makes things very clear and makes things very simple. And let's go back to this analogy of knowing what you want more than what you don't want. And so this is kind of a trick question because, my experience has been when I ask people what they want, what they usually say is everything that they don't want. And so it may look something like this is like, hey, Jesse, what do you want inside of your business or what do you want your business to look like? And oftentimes people say, well, I know what I don't want it to look like. Or if I said, hey, what do you want your marriage to look like. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I know what I don't want in my marriage. And so that's a perfect example of knowing what you don't want more than knowing what you do want. And so we end up getting more of what we don't want. And so that sounds kind of awkward to say. It sounds like a tongue twister, but that's the reality of what a lot of people live in, is they know more of what they don't want than what they do want. And so they get more of what they don't want. And then oftentimes, they wonder why they don't have focus. They wonder why they don't have discipline. And they wonder why they keep getting the very thing that they don't want. And so you got to be clear. What do I want for my goals? What do I have a vision for? Because if I don't have that, I will just get more of what I don't want by default. And default is not a way to be committed to your goals. Now, number 2 is really understanding the why you committed in the first place. And so there's what we want and knowing what we want, but underneath that, there's like, why does it matter? Why are we committed to what we want? And we really discover our priorities behind the why of what we are doing. And I like to think of our why as something that's 5 layers deep. And generally, it would start something like this. A really good example would be like, I want to make more money. Maybe that's what I want, or I want to make X amount of money. But it's like, well, why do you want to make, $50,000, $100,000? And generally it would come down to like, hey, I want to pay off debt, want to pay off my loans. But that's the surface level. Eventually that may turn into, as I ask that question 5 times, well, why do you want to pay off debt? Because it's putting a lot of stress on me. It's putting a lot of stress on how I show up in my business. Well, why do you want to make more money and have less stress? Well, I want to have more freedom, want to have more time with my family and create more experiences. Like, we haven't maybe been on vacation for a couple of years. And so as we get deeper into that, we really understand the why behind it. And so instead of making more money, it turns into really making more experiences with my family. And that's a deeper reason why. And a lot of times our why is what will drive us to want to, create more experiences, to have more freedom. And that deeper meaning is something that really resonates with us and drives us forward and keeps us committed. Now, number 3 is the focus on the routine and not on the results. And so we have a tendency when it comes to, our goals, when it comes to being disciplined, when it comes to all these things, is it's easier to focus on the routine and think of the routine as the small steps, daily habits that it's going to take versus to get to where you want to go versus the end result. And so remember, this is staring at your results isn't going to get you results. I mean, let's just be honest. So if I just sit there and stare at my results every day, that's not going to get me my results. But if I look at what are the small steps, the daily habits that I got to take to get there, and that's my primary focus, that's what I'm focused on, discipline, that gets me to that result that I ultimately want. And so the analogy I like to use is, imagine climbing a mountain, and we got 2 choices. Either, we can stare at the top of the mountain, or we can focus and look down at the next step we got to take, because the next step is usually small, it's simple, and it's going to require very little effort. And it really makes it easier to say, man, all I got to do right now is take this step. But when we make our results so big, staring at the top of that mountain, that's when we tend to get overwhelmed. That's when we tend to look at all the work that it's going to take to reach that versus just focusing on that next step or that next habit. And so we really have to learn, yes, we see the result of climbing that mountain, where we want to go, but we also have to learn to reverse engineer that result into a broken down step, a routine that we can do on a day-to-day basis. Now, number 4 is we want to prepare our environment for success. And so one of my favorite analogies is separation is in the preparation. And so if we can prepare our environment for success, that means we can eliminate distractions and we can eliminate temptation around us. And our environment, believe it or not, will trigger our habits, whether they're good or bad. And so, you think of an alcoholic, if he's set up shop to go into a bar, chances are at some point he's probably going to end up drinking, because the environment is going to trigger specific behaviors that are going to get him to go off track. Even if, say, alcoholic steps into an environment where maybe there's partying, and partying is one of the things that triggers wanting to drink, or being at maybe golfing, and he decides he's going to go into the bar, and normally that would be where he would drink after work or things like that. And so those things trigger those behaviors. And so every single week when I start to look at my goals, I start to look at what I'm working towards, I have to set up my environment for success. And some of the examples, if I wanted to start marketing or studying my marketing, the tendency when we study is to have all kinds of distractions, have windows open on the computer, have different things going at one time. And so sometimes just shutting off our phone, shutting off our computer allows us to be able to focus on that work. And so we're cutting out distractions in the environment and we're getting more focus done. Another example is, the weight loss example is always easy, like clean up our cupboards, clean up our environment. Maybe we have a sweets drawer. All of a sudden that turns into a nut or fruit drawer. So when I reach for those sweets, all of a sudden now I have nuts. I have something else in the environment that will set me up for success. And that's really what I want to work towards. The other part of this is reviewing our goals daily, and I think the important thing when we talk about this is it's easy to have goals. It's easy to have a vision. It's easy to have all these commitments, but if we're not looking at them on a day-to-day basis, then they're no longer top of mind. And when they're not top of mind, it's easy to forget about them. It's easy to forget about the direction we're going. It's easy to forget about the next step when I'm not checking in with my goals daily. Now, the thing on this is really being able to ask yourself a question. Hey, is what I'm about to do getting me closer to what I want or further away? Is the workout I'm about to do getting me closer to what I want or further away? Is the food I'm about to eat getting me closer to what I want or further away? Is the marketing I'm about to study getting me closer to what I want or further away? And if you know your goals, the questions that you can ask yourself become much simpler, because it's like, hey, is what I'm about to do going to get me closer to what I want or further away? That's a pretty easy question to ask ourselves. But if I don't know what I want, then that question becomes very overwhelming and it's very hard to answer. And so these are clear questions that I can ask myself to make sure that I'm staying on track. And, an example I like to say is like, hey, I like to do a review every single day for 2 to 4 minutes and just looking at, my map. And so think of like this review of a goal is really looking at a map every single morning before I take off to the destination I want to get to. And I'm making sure that, hey, this is how I'm going to stay on track. These are the things that I got to get done. And then that destination is really just broken down into simple steps. And cool thing about doing this on a day-to-day basis is that you're training your brain to constantly be thinking about the goal, the next step. You're constantly training your brain that even if you got off track for a day, got off track for 2 days, it wouldn't be so far off track to where you couldn't get back on or course correct in the next day or 2 days. And that's the powerful thing with reviewing your goals and making sure that you do that. So, these are the top 5 ways that, I have really looked at as like, hey, how do I stay committed? And it's really about knowing what you want versus what you don't want. It's about understanding your why you're committed in the first place. It's about focusing on the routine and not the end result. It's about getting your environment prepared for success. And then it's about reviewing your goals on a day-to-day basis. And as you can do this every single day, every single week, man, you're going to have so much easier time being committed to what you want, because it's all going to be focused on small steps. It's all going to be focused on little things that you can get done, and nothing is going to seem overwhelming. The only thing that will really ever seem overwhelming is when we have too many choices and our goal or our vision is too big to where that's our primary focus. And so we just got to come back and chunk it down. So guys, if you're watching this, let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you're learning from this. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me, Jesse at habitbasedlifestyle.com. Until next episode, we'll talk later.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse.